This is Grafted Together with ACSI Chief Ministry Officer Jerry Nelson.
Sports invokes a wide range of memories, both joyous and painful. They encapsulate moments of triumph and the agony of defeat. And in America, sports has been a cornerstone of our culture for over 125 years, particularly with the rise of broadcast television. This evolution has been fueled by corporate sponsorships and the celebration of our hero culture, prominently showcased by brands like Nike and Gatorade. Events like the Super Bowl are treated as national holidays, with March Madness captivating an audience with its bracket competitions as fans eagerly anticipate the emergence of the next Cinderella story. However, in the past 3 decades, the same media that has enriched our sports experiences has also revealed the darker side of this beloved American institution. Scandals have surfaced at all levels, from professional leagues to youth sports, with Christian schools sometimes at the center of the controversy. As Christians, we are called to pursue excellence, but we are also urged and called to pursue righteousness. This raises an important question. How can Christian schools foster an environment that encourages excellence in sports while simultaneously upholding the call by Jesus Christ to seek first the kingdom of God and pursue righteousness? Hi, my name is Jerry Nelson, and this is Grafted Together. I want to remind you that spiritual formation matters. It's what makes Christian education. And if you're not a part of the growing Spiritual Formation Network, you are missing out. We had the privilege of having Dr. Annie Gallagher kick off our training on the Spiritual Formation Journey Map, leading us to understand the importance of having clear expected student outcomes. And so coming up November 18th, we have Dr. Tim Van Solen from the Center for the Advancement of Christian Education at Dordt University, who will walk us through the next phase of our Spiritual Formation Journey Map in the area of assessment. So to register for the Spiritual Formation Network meeting, you can sign up at acsi.org/convene. That is acsi.org/CONVENE, and look for Spiritual Formation Network. Get registered today to connect with spiritual formation ambassadors from around the world and receive regular updates on upcoming training and network opportunities. Again, that's acsi.org/convene. So joining me today to discuss the topic of pursuing excellence and righteousness in sports is Billy Sparacio, who brings nearly 30 years of leadership in high school athletics with experience as a classroom PE teacher and PE department chair, plus 17 years of athletic director as an athletic director overseeing middle school and high school programs. And in 2008, he launched a high school athletic program from under 100 students and later secured a multi-million-dollar facility, culminating in a football state championship and top honors as an overall Florida Athletic Program of the Year. He is known for vision, dedication, and a results-driven approach while keeping faith at the center of his work and using sports to develop students beyond the game. Welcome, Billy, to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Jerry. I appreciate it. It's an honor to share some time with you and ACSI. I love what you stand for, so thanks for having me.
No, absolutely. I mean, just before the podcast, man, we were talking about our connection and our connection to Kingdom Education and our connection to Dr. Taylor, but I think it's always important that our audience get to know who I'm interviewing. You know, tell us a little bit about yourself, your story. We heard a little bit in the introduction, but who is Billy?
Okay. Well, I mean, I've been very, very blessed, and I mean that in the most humble way. I born and raised on Long Island in New York. Great parents. I mean, I was saved, came to know Christ through VBS when I was 8 years old. Was in church when it was open. We were there. Mom and dad were great. Just had a tremendous amount of support, love. So I had this great childhood experience. I knew from a young age, I could remember, Jerry, and I mean this, when you reflect as you get older, reflect on different things. I remember sitting at the kitchen table and telling my mom, I love sports. First, I would say, my whole life, my dad was a baseball guy and, football, baseball, lacrosse, whatever it was, I was playing it. And, PE class, it just love, couldn't get enough of athletics. But I remember sitting at the kitchen table at a young age and telling my mom that I was going to be an NFL football player and then I was going to be a pastor. And, like great parents, they supported, encouraged, and said, go for it. And I look back after all these years and, I had an awesome experience. I went on from high school, played, college football at Colgate University, graduated, got to play a little bit, in NFL Europe after that experience, got released, got cut, got this. And I look back after all these years and I say, I sat at that table and I told my mom, I'm going to be this NFL football player and a pastor. And, while I never made it to the NFL, while I never became a pastor, in the big picture, I feel like God is kind of smiling saying, but you're doing both. I've been involved in athletics, which I love, all athletics. My kids are involved, but I've been always kind of drawn most to football. I've been blessed to coach it for almost 30 years, and I've been coaching in a way that uses sports. I hope with all my heart, I've tried to use sports as a platform and an opportunity for me to be a light for kids and their parents. I think we get caught up a lot of times with the kids we're coaching, but we're modeling a lot of what we're doing in front of their parents. And that is huge because nobody takes the place of parents. I think we can do a great job. All we want as coaches and teachers, but God made it so that parents are the most influential. And I've taken that very serious as I've done that over the years. So I look back and I'm like, I never, on paper, I didn't get this NFL career. I wasn't a pastor, but I'm kind of doing both and been blessed. I wouldn't change a thing. That's kind of a quick 2-minute my background, but been very, very fortunate, very blessed. I could share with you how I got into coaching, but if we could go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to know, how did you make that journey from, all right, playing career is over. When did you start coaching? What was your coaching journey? How did you, and kind of move that into, how did you kind of develop your own philosophy of coaching? Because, playing a sport is different than coaching the sport. And not all people who are great at what they do, they can't translate it into coaching. So talk about your journey to moving into the coaching realm.
Yeah. So, I was very fortunate. I got a great family. I've been, married to my wife now. We just celebrated 30 years and we dated through high school.
Congrats.
So at the end of 10th grade, going in 11th, I met her. She's obviously my girlfriend then at the time. And then we got married and, went to college. I went to one school. She went to another, stayed together all those years through. And I share that with you because I would say my coaching experience started when I was in Alabama. I was at payphone in Alabama. And I remember, and I say this, it's kind of very transparent, but I called her from a payphone back when we didn't have cell phones. I called her from a payphone on the side of the road in Alabama, with tears in my eyes because I just worked out for a team. And I didn't have a great workout. I can't remember exactly, but if I would have done well, they would have signed me and I didn't get signed. So I remember just feeling in my gut that I've been bouncing around all over the country trying to get hooked up with somebody. And at that payphone, I said, that's it. I said, God's got a different plan for me. I'm coming home and that's it. And, that's what I did. I came home, we got married. And, shortly after, I was to be truthful with you, Jerry, I was so bitter toward football because once you get out of high school and college and you get in and getting paid to play, back then the professional ranks was where you got paid. Now it's a little different in college, but it became a business. And I realized right away that this is different. And, I was upset with it. So I got mad at football almost and kind of boycotted it, maybe even got mad at God a little bit because that was my plan. And why did he not bless me with that? And I felt like I had done all the right things, God, so I deserve, which, isn't the way it goes. But that's the flesh. I mean, I'm just being real. I think we all feel that way at times. So, for about 9 months, I worked a job. We moved to Florida shortly after we got married. Her and I moved to Florida, and that was a blessing. That's another whole story. But for 9 months, I worked a job in construction. I did some sales and some things, and it was empty. And I remember coming home one day saying, I don't like what I'm doing. And my wife challenged me. Her name is Tara. Tara said, when are you going to start acting like a Christian instead of just saying that you are? And I remember I was like, there's part of me that was like, get out of my way, because now you just lit a fire, like, who are you to challenge me, kind of. And at the other side of me was like, what a blessing, what a righteous wife, what a good woman that is gonna, be my helpmate. That's what a wife is.
Amen.
And it's not a helpmate like, oh, you do this and I'm the man and I do that. It's a helpmate like, you are going to give me advices that only a woman, the way God designed her, could give me. Because let's be honest, all the other men that I was around, they were competing with me. They didn't love me the way my wife loved me. They didn't love our to-be family. So she gave me that advice, and she said, when are you going to act? And I immediately knew in my heart, I want to be around kids. And if I can't play ball, let me go coach it. So I immediately looked into, how do I become a substitute teacher? Obviously I had a college education, and, I could become a teacher. So I was like, let's do this. So I went and I jumped in the car, and I literally went to the first high school that was closest to where we lived. I walked into their office and I said, how do I become a substitute teacher? They said, oh, we don't need any subs right now, but if you go down the road a little bit, there's a school that maybe you could work with there. And I walked in, and I was, probably 23, 24, and I was still like physically fit and just got done playing ball. And the assistant principal had been a college coach for many years, and he was a Christian man. And he said, do you play football? I said, I used to. I don't play anymore. And literally without an interview or anything, he's like, you're hired. You're going to work with our football program. I said, well, I'm here to be a substitute teacher. Can I sub? I need to make money. And I didn't even care, Jerry. I knew God was like literally calling me to do this. As a construction person, I was making really good money. And I remember coming home and telling my wife, okay, I met this awesome guy. He said that I could be a permanent substitute teacher, which means I didn't have to bounce around from schools. I'd be working with a group of kids that were emotionally disturbed and had some, health issues and things. And I would be like an aide in that room. And I'm only going to make, it was like $6.90 an hour. And I remember like gladly taking that job, and no insurance. I want to say like we had a kid on the way. It was our first, like we were so in over our heads, but God did that. And I started coaching as an assistant coach. I started, teaching and being an aide in that classroom, getting around those kids who needed so much support. And I did that for probably 2 or 3 years. And then I went and got all my licenses. I became a history teacher. And shortly after, to speed it all up, I was in the public schools for 10 years total. After my 4th year at that first school, I jumped over to another high school. Their coach there knew me, offered me an assistant position, a little, offensive position. And within like 6 months, the principal and the athletic director at that big public school asked me if I would apply for the head coaching job. So I was 29. I was trying to be obedient to God, and here God gave me an opportunity to be at a big public school, to be the head coach there. It was kind of unheard of at the time. Now they hire younger guys, but back then, getting a job that young was pretty cool. And, while I was in a public school, I never, I made mistakes after mistakes. Don't get me wrong, but I always kept the main thing. And that was to use sports, particularly football for me, as a platform, where I could, I called it maybe character building, but I could coach beyond football. So that's my beyond the game. We'll talk about that later. But I was coaching with intention to really share Christ with kids. and not make it just about football. Although I was highly competitive, I needed to be. You got to have success, and that's how I did it there. So I was head coach for like 5 years at that high school, and then just to bring you up to speed and kind of talk about First Baptist Academy over at the church. I had been for 10 years. I had been attending that church, so I've been a public school teacher. The pastor at the church, asked me to speak numerous times to the men's groups. They knew who I was. I was his football coach. So I got a call. I got a new principal. And I got a new athletic director at the public school. And some of the things that I was doing in a Christ-honoring way through the football program, maybe they wanted to shift it in another direction. So I knew it might be time for me to make a change. God put it on my heart. I thought I would go maybe coach college, maybe a bigger high school. And I had this, I'll tell you this quick story, but it's a God thing. So I want to share this. I had this really awesome job out in another state. I won't even say, but it was big high school, very big, very good football program. I was one of 2 finalists for the job. It was me and a guy that they had at their school that had been a coach there, a defensive coordinator for 12 years. And I was the finalist. I was getting ready to fly out there to go do the final interviews. And I got a phone call one day, and the phone call was from the athletic director. And he said, "Man, I love you. I think you're a really good candidate. And, but I got to tell you, I'm not going to fly you out, because if I don't hire the other guy, the boosters are going to lose their mind. He's been our guy for 12 years. I'm sorry. I'm just being very real with you. It would be a waste of your time." So I was pretty crushed.
Yeah.
Disappointed, went home, told my wife. We both probably shed a little tears because we were already, how it is. You get all emotion, you get all fired up. You got yourself already, getting the job. Yeah. And, for a minute you get discouraged and you're like, okay, God's in control. So I remember she told me, she said, okay, I got some hamburgers here. Could you go cook them on the grill outside? And I went out, started flipping hamburgers. She comes outside and, obviously then you just had the home phone. And she said, hey, the Christian school, FBA, First Baptist Academy, of the school where the church we go to, is on the phone. Now, I got 3 kids. My oldest 2 were like 2nd and 4th grade at the time. So I saw that school as awesome because it was a small Christian school. They were teaching my kids a biblical worldview. They were sharing Christ in every subject. It was awesome. We were on fire for the Lord in everything we did. But it was a rinky-dink little elementary, middle school kind of a place. So when she came out and said they would like to speak to you, I went back in, grabbed the phone, and I said, hey, how are you? And they were like, hey. Now I knew everybody from the school because that was my church, and my kids went there, and they knew me as the big bad high school, public school coach. So they said they were, Mr. Tom Ryder would like for you to interview for the athletic director's job for the school. So immediately I said, I'll be honest, I said, are you, like, to myself, I didn't say this to the lady, I said, are you kidding me? This school is like they don't even have sports. This is like a little kiddie school. So I said yes, because I honor the people there. I knew it was the right thing to do just to have the interview. And I said yes. I hung up the phone. And as I walked back out to those hamburgers and told my wife what just happened, and I, in an arrogant way, kind of was like, they don't even know who they're talking to. Like, I'm bigger than this. I felt God tell me clearly, this is where you're going.
Wow.
We were studying the book of Nehemiah, Jerry, and in my Sunday school, they called it Bible and Life classes. And how Nehemiah had a vision to rebuild the wall. And I couldn't help but take that story and say that I was going to build something. I felt God tell me, you're going to build something there through sports.
Yes.
You're going to, I got you studying Nehemiah, and I want you to continue to study it. And Jerry, I tell you, before I left, First Baptist Academy, when you sat in my office, behind me was this painting of Nehemiah when he overlooked the remnants and it was all broken down and he was going to rebuild it. And I must have read that story so many times. We studied it as a coaching staff with my coach. We did so much with Nehemiah because I just felt like God said to me, this looks small and insignificant, but you need to trust me. So when I took that job, everybody in the community, my friends, people were like, you just destroyed your career. Like,
Wow.
what are you doing? This is so silly. Like this is not a good decision. You need to go coach college or whatever. So I took the job. The rest is kind of history. And I spent 17, 18 years there. It was very, very hard, very difficult, lots of trials and tribulations, but I got to work with some amazing people. God really blessed. So all of it is just a complete blessing to him. He just used people like he does to do great things. So that's some of the background. That's how I got into coaching. But being an AD was really special to me because I got to coach coaches and I got to be the head football coach.
Yeah, yeah. And what's so cool, and one of the reasons that I love just talking to people, I love doing these podcasts is you get to hear folks' spiritual formation journey and how God is just shaping them. It's like, yes, God calls us to do something specific, but he's shaping us in that process and really directing us in a particular direction. And it's the interesting thing is sometimes we don't realize what God is doing until we get to the destination that or the place that he's really designated us for that season. So I love the fact that that vision that the Lord gave you, as a young man, as a little boy, and what he wanted to do. I can definitely see the intersection between the two because, as you just said, God has put you in a place where you are ministering, you're being the pastor, the overseer, the shepherd of so many people. And because of your faithfulness, God over the years has increased your territory, not in terms of winning or wins and losses, but the amount of people that you can affect positively and point towards Christ in your sphere of influence. And I think that part of your story, that speaks for itself, just that you were obedient to the Lord. And by the way, thank God for great wives. I think all great wives have a junior Holy Spirit badge somewhere.
and I have been, and as you and I talk, it all sounds great, right? Oh man, what a great story. They won a championship. There's so many kids, walk closer to the Lord. Now these kids are having kids. So I got I do a little men's group, and a lot of these kids that are coming to my house to do this men's group, they're kids I coached years ago who have babies now. And that all sounds cool, but it wasn't always, it was really hard. And you said it, yes, like your journey is awesome and the vision God gives you. But while you're going through it, Jerry, it's a lot of times it's awful. It's really, really hard. It's discouraging. You have to trust and really have faith. So I try really hard now because I lose faith and I doubt so quickly. I try really hard to say, okay, whether it be in a journal or the Bible that I've been using, it's all marked up and stuff, like God will just work it out so that I'll flip a page and it will say, I'll have written something from 15 years ago. And it's just a word that I needed to say, God did it then, God could do it again. Don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. And you mentioned the wife. I've been hard on my wife because when things go hard, you have to be righteous. You have to be a man of good character to your parents at school, to your boss, to your leadership. You have to be patient with your employees and the people who are under you. But you could be you when you get home. And then sometimes the ones you love the most see the worst side of you. So, to be real, like I listen to podcasts of Navy SEALs and Christian guys, they're so real. I want to be real. I said to myself, if I ever had an opportunity to share, I want to be real. My real was not always great to my wife. And she has been so mentally tough where that other partner, that's what I mean by that partner. It's like a workout partner. When I'm not only down, but when I'm being maybe difficult to her, the strength, not physical, but the mental in her soul, in her heart, love for the Lord and love for me, to be able to say, fix yourself. Remember what God has done for us. Look at our family. Look at your friends. Look at that. Just look at this. Look at that. There's proof that God showed up all those times. So why am I not? And you read that. That's why I love the Old Testament. Like the Jewish people, they were so great at telling stories, but I want to say, listen to the stories you're telling, and you always forget. And then you turn your back on God. And I'm like, wait a second. So do I. Who am I to judge them? I turn my back. So she's corrected me so many times. And like you said, behind every great leader is an even better leader person. So I've been very blessed. I knew it when I met her. That's the one, and I've kept her. But it's been very, very helpful. I'd be in big trouble without her.
Well, praise God for Tara. So, well, I want to kind of pivot to the meat of our conversation, and sports, as I said at the top of the broadcast here, it's a part of American culture. I mean, and of course, it's a part of other cultures, but we know it very, very well, here. I want to talk about, like, the sports is super positive. I mean, it teaches things that you can't learn in a math class, you can't learn in a science class, you can't learn in art, and you can't learn in the music class. But it simulates something about life that seems at times more reflective of life than any other subject that you may even study. So let's kind of unpack the benefits of sports.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I can share, the benefits of sports, a lot of times when you're a high school coach, baseball, basketball, soccer, football, whatever your sport is, volleyball, tennis, it doesn't matter. Kids have dreams to go on to college and get their degree. And sometimes they can trade their athleticism for maybe a scholarship, free education. Or I even say to kids, if you're not going to get a scholarship, still play sports in school, because sports is great because it keeps you disciplined. I think idle hands is people would say idle hands is the tool of the devil. It's when you have free time, you can find yourself wasting time and doing things that, when you're playing a sport, there's not a whole lot of free time. Your coaches take up a lot of that. So sports keeps you, really, really busy. But one of the things that I share with parents, as they talk to me about, like, what's the benefits of sports? What sports does that I feel really, there's so many things we could talk about, but when you talk to people who are graduating college, and I do this quite a bit, talk to people graduating college, and then you have these companies who go out and they want to hire, different people. Now you have to have a skill set, but you ask them, what are you looking for, and who do you want to hire? You hear a lot of companies say, we're looking for ex-athletes, military people. And you say, why? And they say, because they have failed. They failed so many times. A lot of times, I think what sports teaches is how you deal with failure. I'll use baseball. Baseball's a failure sport. I mean, if you hit the ball 3 out of 10 times, you go to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, you're Hall of Famer.
It's a game of failure. I look at football. There's so much. You get knocked down all the time. Every play, you pretty much get knocked down, and you have to will yourself to get back up again. Good. So this idea of failure, and you talk to the people who own businesses, why do you want to hire athletes? It's their mental toughness, their fortitude, their perseverance to continue to overcome failure is so very important. So I think that's one of the qualities. The other thing is stress. I think, Jerry, one of the things that sports does, and I think it's a good thing, sometimes we live sometimes in this like wimpy society where parents don't want their kids.
Everybody gets a trophy.
Everybody gets a trophy, but not even so much everybody gets to be a winner. They don't want their kids to deal with hard things. They just want to make it better. So I remember being a kid and I was kind of younger than some of the kids on my block back in the days when you used to get on your bicycles and drive around, and that's what you did all day. Sometimes what would happen was those kids in the neighborhood, they would get on the bike and they would go in a place that I wasn't allowed to go. And we used to call it flat leaving. And I'd come home crying and be like, Mom, my friends all flat left me. I don't have any friends. And my parents would say, well, I don't know, get busy. Go do something else. Go make another friend. Not make it better for me. You have to figure out. So there's the failure and then there's stress. How do you deal with stress? How do you deal? And, in a good way, I think sports provides opportunities, because you're always playing sports. What's different about sports, you mentioned math, you mentioned different things. Like what's different about sports is you're usually doing it in front of people. So now you're dealing with failure. You're dealing with stress of having to succeed or look, because you're doing it in front of people. Yeah. And, your whole family's there. Like your mom and dad, they invite your grandma and grandpa. Everybody's there to watch you make a free throw. It's pressure. And I don't want my children to go through difficult, hard things and have setbacks. Of course, I want to help them through, but at the same time, that's where you grow. Yeah. When you do a hard workout and your body hurts, that's when you're growing. So I think it's failure. I think it's stress. And then the other big thing that I would say that sports does is, especially team sports, you have to learn how to work with people. Yeah. And as much as we want to be honest as Christians, people drive me crazy because they're not like me. Yeah. I want everybody to do things like me. And when you're working on a team, when you coach, when you're playing on a team, you have to depend on people to do their job. You have to do your job. And that's really, really difficult. So, you say, what do sports do? What disciplines do sports teach? Right off the bat, like I think of, failure, overcoming failure. I think of stress, like dealing with stress. And then another big thing is just being a team, thinking of others before you think of yourself. That's so anti our culture right now. It's about me. Everything's about me. My social media sites, everything is about me. Whereas sports, a lot of, so that Jerry could have success. I'm going to block for you. Wait a second. That doesn't, what's in it for me? Yeah. Well, nothing. You're a part of a team. That's real world. Like when you're a part of a team, which is pretty much your family, your business, your career, you got to work with people. So it helps you in that way, like nothing else does.
Yeah, that's really good. So let's just kind of pivot to, we understand the failure aspect, the stress and resilience aspect, the teamwork aspect. And we know that these principles show up in scripture. Immediately when you were talking about not wanting your kids to fail, I thought about when Jesus was sitting with the disciples, right before he was about to go be crucified. He says, in this world, you will have troubles, but I have overcome these troubles. So it was like he was preparing them for hardship so that when those hardships came, they wouldn't be surprised. It's like, no, this is kind of par for the course. So let's talk about, the Christian school's responsibility, because I think if you talk to any Christian school administrator, they would 100% agree with what you just said: failure, resilience, and even in the research that's come out, at every level with students. And I just came across a research that was done by Barna that parents are even more stressed out today, and there's a lack of resilience there. What is the biblical worldview, if you will, of sports? How are we supposed to, as Christian leaders, Christian heads of schools, Christian athletic directors, Christian coaches, students who play within that program, everyone around that program, how are we supposed to approach this in a way that pursues excellence, Colossians 3:23, but make sure that we're doing it in a way that pursues righteousness, where we're genuinely honoring and pursuing the call that all Christians, regardless of what they are, have, where they are and what they do, have on their life? How do we do that, Billy?
Well, it's a great question. It's a tough question. It's not easy. It really isn't, because one of the things that I just would like to say, Jerry, is a lot of times sports, could be a lot of things, but sometimes sports brings out the worst in you. Competition, I should say, brings out the worst in us. It makes me compare myself to you, because I want to win. And if I win, then good things usually happen to me. I make more money, I get more trophies, I get more power, I get more status. So it's a very, very tough question. A biblical worldview, or it's what I would say is this, and I try to live this. I, with all of my heart, I want to make sure that I do things, and this was our motto at First Baptist Academy, and I've kept it as a motto for my life and my new business. My True Victory Consulting is all about what I call the number 4, HG, for His glory. And I would tell my players this: winning. The winning is great. We all love to win. Don't lie. You love winning. Everybody loves winning. You don't go say, I hope I lose. You want to win.
Yeah, we love a winner. Everybody loves a winner.
Really look at it. Everybody loves a winner. Everybody wants to be a part of it. Winning is we'll get into that in a second. What I want to answer is the biblical worldview part. I believe with all of my heart, I don't care if you're a missionary in India or you are a roofer in Naples, Florida. You should be doing everything for HG. So you mentioned Colossians 3:23. That was in our weight room. And I would say that's the standard. 4HG is the standard. So everybody has a standard. That's what your culture looks to. Like you say, culture, we all do this talk about culture and values and all this stuff. Your standard, what you permit, you promote. So your standard is right here. And I would say our standard is 4HG. So at the end of the day, whatever it is that we're doing, did we do it for God's glory? There's no difference between, in God's eyes, I believe this, there's no difference between being a missionary in India than a roofer if you're doing it for God's glory. People should be able to look at that roofer and say, there's something different every day about that girl, that guy. They just teach their class different. They just, hammer nails different. They live different. They not only have integrity, it's not about being a good person. Let's not get caught up in that. And, I did all these nice things and it makes me a good person. That's a byproduct of loving Jesus. We should be good people because just like your dad, it's a healthy fear. I want to do well. I want to make you proud, God. Not I'm going to get a reward and you're going to let me in heaven. But it's bigger than doing good and being a man of integrity. It's being the best that we can be with how God bent us. And that's the thing I think forgive me if this is just my thoughts here, but I think the church gets messed up sometimes because the church will emphasize certain sacred jobs that make you almost more Christian.
Yeah.
I don't believe in that. I don't buy into that. I think you can be, Billy Graham said a coach will impact more people than any pastor. And I think he's right. I do. I think he's right. But how is he impacting? Is he impacting just to get trophies, or is he impacting for eternal value? That's my company name. Eternal value is true victory. You want true victory? Live forever with Jesus. So to answer your question, how can we make sure that we keep a biblical worldview in athletics? You need to make sure that everything that's going on is done in a way that honors God. Now, I'm going to say something that might ruffle feathers, but having a program and not giving your best effort, just having a program and not doing it with excellence, and just putting a uniform on all of your volleyball girls and all of your football players and basketball players and saying, hey, we play in the little Christian school conference and everybody's nice and we all say a prayer before the game. Let me tell you something. That's great. But I'm being honest here. How many people are you impacting for the kingdom? Because that level of excellence, nobody's attracted to. People are attracted to a level of excellence where they say to somebody, wow, what is that guy? What's different? He does it different. It's not all about him. It's about more. And what is that more? So again, I believe in both, and I think you could be both. I think you could be a great, excellent, on the wins and losses scale. I think you could do things with excellence. I think you could be great. I think you could be champions and acquire a lot of stupid banners and trophies and all that stuff. It's why we're playing the game. We're running to win the race. You don't run to tie, you run to win.
That's
but
right.
If you're doing it just to win, I think you're falling short of the glory of God. And that's what's so heavy on my heart right now with my business is how do I get athletic directors and heads of schools to get on the same page so that all those qualities come out and there's not a conflict. So, to answer, wrap it up, is the biblical worldview is not, oh, this is how you do it. It should be in everything we do. I should parent like awesome. I should cut my grass. People should look at my grass and say, man, that guy does things great. Everything should lead to somebody to say, what makes you different, Jerry? Why do you do it different? And that's what I wanted people to say about our program.
Yeah, when we were talking, over in Fort Lauderdale, you said something that I don't think I've ever heard a former athletic director say, and we were talking about the relationship between the head of school and the athletic director, and how important that is. And I remember you saying that the athletic director needs to recognize his or her responsibility to that head of school. Man, I'd love for you to talk about that, because, and then talk about the effects on that, both positive and negative, to the overall culture of not just the athletic department, but the school as well.
Okay. So let me make sure I got this. The relationship AD or coaches, prominent coaches, your head boys basketball coach is a big coach in your school and your head of school. And that's the first part. And then maybe you could give me the second part again, after I say this. But for the first part, what I would say is, the way I think what I'm hearing is, what's the breakdown? What happens that they're not on the same page? And what I would say, Jerry, is truthfully, it's the pride of man. Okay, this is what happens. And I say pride of man, pride of woman. It's mankind. And I'll give you just an example, and I've shared this. So I'll just use me, Billy, Jerry, and I'll just make up two names, Tommy and Stevie. So Tommy's the boss. He's in charge of all of us. We work for a construction company, and Tommy's the big boss. And Tommy gives me a job, and I got to build a hospital. It's a 10-story hospital, and it's awesome, glass. He gives Jerry a job, and Jerry's got to build a 2-story building, and it's a bank, and it's nice. And then Bobby, he's going to build a garage. And we start building these things, and we're all doing it with excellence. But the most attention comes to me, because I'm building a 10-story awesome hospital, and I got millions and millions of dollars in it. And my boss, Tommy, he's getting a lot of really big props because I'm killing it. Now you're killing it too. And it's a bank, and it's 2 stories, and everybody's excited. So let's just be real. Football is the hospital, maybe basketball is the bank, and then maybe cross country or something is the smaller building. And what happens sometimes is the pride of man jumps in, and the football coach or the athletic director who's building that hospital, not only is he getting so much attention, but some of the people who are benefiting from the hospital, they come to him and say, hey man, I want to give you more money. Let's make it 20 stories. I want to support this athletic program. Let's do this. Let's do that. And the pride of man gets involved. And if you don't check yourself, and if you don't stay humble, because it's all about humility. If you don't have humility, that's another whole thing. But if humility is not a part of what you are as a man, I think it's very, very hard to be a follower of Christ without being humble. You have to deny yourself daily. And when you're winning, and when people are telling you how great you are, and the newspapers have your name in there, it's hard to stay humble, because that feels good. So what happens is, the guy who's building the hospital, he thinks he's a little bit better than Jerry, and he definitely thinks he's going to be he's better than the guy who's building the garage. He might even think he's better than the guy who's overseeing the whole thing, because without me, this whole project, this whole construction company isn't what it's supposed to be, or isn't what it is. And the pride of man gets involved. Now you could flip that around. And this is a part that, I'll be honest, a lot of heads of schools, this is where I think they fall short on the athletic director side, is in an effort for them to maybe feel like everybody feels good, they will strip power away from the guy building the big hospital. So now you have to build this 10-story hospital, and you only have $50. And you're going to give $50 to the bank, and you're going to give $50 to the garage. And that doesn't make any sense, because you need $50 million to build a big hospital. You need support. So the head of school will pull the support away from athletics and give it to the fine arts, or give it to the robotics lab, or give it to the nursery department, whatever it is, and pull it away from that thing that needs so much support. And they do it in an effort to kind of like put that person in their place. And if you really be honest with yourself, that's the pride of man. So to answer your question, I think what happens, and the breakdown that happens, is the leadership has to cast a vision. So if you're the head of school, you're going to cast a vision. And if it's a Christian school, that vision is going to be for our school to be the best, Christ honoring school we can be. You got to make sure, and as an AD, I would always check myself and say, I got to make sure that I am falling under the umbrella of the mission that the head of school has cast. Mm-hmm. If I have problems with that, there's nothing wrong with me to schedule a meeting and say, hey, Jared, we got to talk. I'm confused. What's your mission? What are we doing? What's the vision of the school? I'm a passionate person. I mean, you can see I'm fired up. I want to go. Let's go. Sports is huge. Let's cast a vision. But if I'm doing my own thing, that's when I think sports could be a burden, and almost, I hate using the word burden. I want to use blessing. I want all Christian schools to not think of athletics or the arts as a burden. I want them to think of it as a blessing. It's just like your kids, like they're so good at something and you're like, man, this is so hard. We got to go take them to extra credit here. And we got to do, that's a blessing. Your kid's good at it. Don't see that as a burden. This is awesome. What would you rather have? That they're not good at this? So see it as a blessing. But I think that it comes to the humility and the communication. So the head of school needs to be able to sit down, or the AD needs to be able to sit down and have good communication to say, hey, let's check ourselves before the Lord. Let's make sure neither one of us are getting out in front of 4HG, because it's all for his glory.
Right.
Now, let's be truthful. People that I bumped into yesterday, I forgot where it was. Hey man, this Saturday is going to be awesome. There's a bunch of good games on. The Ryder Cup is on. That everybody's crazy about sports in this country. It's we're not going to fix that. We're not going to change that. But how could we make that honor God?
I love that. Yeah.
That's what we need to do as believers, is to say, okay, some people are in sports. Some people are in finance and they're just super smart. Some people are in video games, whatever it is. How do we use how God bent us? He bent us all different. How do we use what we're inclined to do for God's honor? That's winning.
Right. What I really appreciate, and you answer my question, is that at the core of it is it's Christians being Christians, right? It's the Matthew 5, Matthew 18 principle. If you got something that you need to talk about, go and talk about it and have a conversation. But what also came to my mind is I wonder if, heads of schools, and this is not to necessarily pick on heads of schools, but just to kind of draw it out, that maybe some heads of schools inherit, some situations that are not favorable. Maybe they're inheriting as my pastor used to say, the tail wagging the dog. What advice would you give to those heads of schools who may be inheriting, dare I say, a really toxic situation where the culture is being more set by the athletic department versus it being set from, the leadership who that authority has been given to? What advice would you give to the head of school?
Well, the thing that I would say is this, the advice that I would give is this, and I've heard that before. This is awesome. I love that I'm doing a podcast with you, but please take this the right way, Jared. I'm not a yes man. So I'm going to challenge something. I always hated the phrase, the tail wagging the dog. I had, unfortunately one of my dogs passed, but I had 2 dogs. The tail is the dog. The dog is the tail. There is no such thing. The tail doesn't like if the tail is really beautiful and it wags and everybody says, wow, well, look at that awesome tail, then you should be excited and you should promote that, and you should wash it and clean it and make it look as pretty as you can and support it. You shouldn't chop it off and say, don't look at the tail, look at the rest of the dog. That's the pride of man. I've heard that so many times, the tail's wagging the dog. Well, I think your pride is basically saying you don't like the attention that the athletic department is getting. So you're trying to shift that attention either towards the church or towards the school. What you really need to be asking is the attention the athletic department getting, is it honoring God? Because if it's honoring God, all the power to the athletic department. Let's ride that thing for as long as we can because it's honoring God. Why are we not using that the best we can? If you're in a church and VBS is the biggest thing, let's wag that tail and dog and whatever. Let's make VBS. And then everybody else will do better because VBS is doing great. I used to say this all the time because I've had this conversation 1,000 times. If athletics is the big thing, I'll use Alabama. I'll use Florida Gators. You look at these colleges. These schools are blowing up. Kids are going from all over the country. They want to go to Alabama. Why do you think they want to go to Alabama? No disrespect to Alabama. They want to go to Alabama because they got a great football team, great athletics. Their stadium is incredible. They got great sororities and fraternities. It's an incredible culture. The president of Alabama isn't jealous of Nick Saban and Coach DeBoer.
And most people don't even know the names of the presidents. They know the coaches.
They know the coach. They asked him that. They asked the governor of the state of Alabama, do you know that Nick Saban makes more money than you do? And he said, yeah. And I'm thankful for Nick Saban because he makes Alabama a better place.
The highest paid state employee, as they call him.
Yes. But here's what I would say. That becomes a problem if Nick Saban is not falling under the umbrella of the vision of the governor of Alabama. If Nick Saban, if football becomes a huge thing at XYZ High School, XYZ Christian High School, then ride that thing. Where it becomes a problem is if football is honoring football and not honoring God.
Yeah.
If football's honoring God, then guess what? At halftime, the band is going to have 5,000 people watching the band because 5,000 people are coming to watch the football game. They're not coming to watch the band, but the band gets to be a part of it. The cheerleaders, the flag line, the whole school culture, the kids, let's ride it. Where sports, please get this, and I want heads of schools to get this. Where the problem exists is when the athletic department strategically for the mission of the kingdom does not line up with the school's mission for the kingdom. It's not what's most popular because you can go to certain high schools and they could have an incredible arts department. If that arts department is just like this unbelievable thing and they're honoring God, we should be trying to do whatever we can to use that to get more students at our school, because if you could get more kids to come to the school, then they're going to know Christ because of that fine arts program. Why would we not take advantage of that? Where I think the breakdown happens and it becomes toxic is when athletics becomes, and that's why I don't like the phrase tail wagging the dog, when athletics becomes popular, because let's face it, athletics is popular. You're not going to change that. If you and I went to Brazil right now and we started talking about the NFL, they wouldn't care. They care about soccer. They care about their teams. Exactly. You're not gonna change that, Jerry. Why are we trying to change the culture? We need to make sure that what we're doing within the framework of our culture honors God. That's what we need to be doing as Christian schools. So whatever it is, do it for the glory of God. Not everybody's a football player. Not everybody's a basketball player. Not everybody's a cheerleader. Not everybody's an academia. But if you are, do it for the glory of God, because there's a lot of academia schools out there. They're not doing it for the glory of God. That's just as negative as all the popularity that sports might get. So the breakdown, to wrap it up, I think the breakdown comes in, we're focusing on the wrong thing. And again, it brings us back to the pride of man. I don't think it's like the sports is a bad thing. I think that the other programs get a little jealous or get a little like, hey, it's all about this. Okay, great. As long as that is about the kingdom, then let's work that. Let's ride that. Let's make that a big part of our school. The problem becomes when it becomes so popular, a lot of times that AD and that coach, they think it's all about winning. And the truth is, that's not true victory. You could get all the trophies, have all the money, you're still going to be empty. We hear stories about it all the time. Use your platform to get true victory, to share. But no one's going to follow a loser. Let's get that clear. No one wants to be 2-8. Nobody. And that goes for school too. Nobody's going to a school that's a D school. Oh, I want to go there. They worship Jesus, but they don't know how to read and write. That doesn't work. You have to have good academics.
And so, I mean, it's obviously clear that the Lord has just really shaped you to this point where He's filled you with a lot of wisdom through your experiences, through reading His Word, and the Lord allowing you to see His vision for His glory through His kingdom. And God has given you a vision, moved you into this season. And you just mentioned a couple of times, just really helping schools, heads of schools, athletic directors in particular, to understand what true victory is. And so, hey, can we, before we close out today, talk a little bit about True Victory Consulting? I mean, you gave us some background into what God's called you to do. But yeah, man, just give us a little commercial about what God's called you to do and the type of services that you offer through True Victory Consulting.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. I would say, as a coach, I think some of the qualities that I tried to teach my coaches and that I tried to share is some of the same things that I want to do now with heads of schools and athletic directors. And, I want to, as a coach, you have to be a great communicator. You have to be a person of great integrity. You have to be a person that has a lot of enthusiasm. You have to be able to motivate, but you got to know your content. If you're a coach and you're a soccer coach and you don't know anything about, the game of soccer, it's not going to be very long until your players realize you don't know what you're talking about. So you got to be competent. You got to know what you're talking about. And after doing what I've been doing for almost 30 years, I feel like I know through experience, but I'll be honest with you. I think the thing that's driving me now more than ever is I think I realize I got to keep growing. I got to keep getting around other people. So I keep learning. I might know more than some of the other younger ADs or even some heads of schools that are just starting through my experiences, but I want to keep growing. I want to keep learning. I want to continue to be a great communicator. But I think the thing that separates coaches, and this is what, for me as the leader of True Victory, the thing that makes the best coaches to me in the whole world is coaches who have the ability to, you could coach two ways, in my opinion. You could coach through love, or you could coach by fear. You could strike fear into somebody and you can make them do stuff that is incredible. And then you can love on people and you can get them to do things that they never thought they can do. So there's two ways to really coach and motivate: fear and love. And one of the things that I tried to always get better at, and I felt like God has given me a gift of, was to be really emotionally and socially connected to my players and to my coaches, to have empathy and to understand where people are in their journey. I always tried, even if it was like a third string lineman and they were never going to play, I tried really hard to understand, like, what is that kid feeling? Have some empathy. They need to know they have a purpose. So what, you mentioned True Victory. Like, I want to take the same qualities that I feel. I was very demanding as a coach. I mean, Jerry, I'll be honest, I was hard. But I didn't demean. I didn't put the kids down. I challenged the mess out of them. I challenged the mess out of my own children. I mean, our standard is here. You better hit it. I'm going to get after you. But I'm there doing it with you. And I'm doing it with you because this is what God, it's all relevant, Jerry. Winning is relevant. How much potential do you have and do I have? My daughter came last night and I got my two grandchildren here. If I sat down with my grandson and said, we're going to have a contest, who can do more push-ups? I'm going to win every time. It's relevant. I'm stronger than him. You will always be able to win if you're competing against somebody with lesser skills. At the end of the day, as a coach and as a True Victory, as a consultant now, I want to be able to empathize. I don't want to have all the answers for a head of school. I don't have all the answers. I don't want to have all the answers for a new athletic director. I want to be able to come alongside and say, look, I get it. I understand. I value where you're at. You have a purpose. And even though you're a small little rinky-dink school right now, or you're a monster, you're at the top of the food chain and you're doing great. Here's your purpose. This is what, God is doing in your life, and come along and really demand that they do the best they can, not for a trophy, but so that God would be honored, and not just the kids, but the people who come to the games. This is what's so great about sports. You need to, we would have constant meetings as an AD. I'd have tons of meetings on the game day experience. I'm big on game day experience. It needs to be awesome. Lights, stinking banners, everything. There needs to be fireworks. It needs to be great, because most of the people there are not playing on the field. They're watching. What are they seeing? What are they feeling? What is the atmosphere that's drawing them to the king and the kingdom? If they walk away and they just saw a good football game, that's cool. But was it different? And I would hear so many parents say to me, I love coming to the games. It's just different. It's a family. They would say that word. And then I would say, in a humble way, I would say, man, I hit it, because I heard it's a family. I wanted to hear family, because to me, nothing is more outside of my salvation. Nothing's more important to me than family. So, to answer your question, as I talked about true victory, I want to encourage. I'll give three things that I want to encourage heads of schools and coaches and athletic directors. I do a mentoring program for athletic directors. It's a 10-month program. We could work with schools, and I could do it 6 months. I could do it 4 months, whatever they want, whatever their needs are. But I can mentor your athletic director, and I can help them get on the same page as the head of school. While I'm mentoring that athletic director, I'm kind of meeting and mentoring and working with that head of school, because it's not just total submission. It's working together. So I can do a mentoring program. I can mentor your basketball coach or football coach and get them to understand the bigger picture of the kingdom athletics that a Larry Taylor is so big on back in the day at Prestonwood. I can work and do that. And then the biggest one, the other kind of three-legged stool that I have is I want to work with ADs to coach. It's a service that I provide called Beyond the Game. You need to coach with intention for teaching kids life after sports. So I would never, and if I walked into our basketball or baseball or volleyball practice and I saw one of my coaches coaching and they were just winging it, like they were just rolling the balls out there, I'd be like, Jerry, what are you doing? Where's your practice plan? I would challenge you. I would get after you. Like, you better have, you don't just roll the balls out there. None of my coaches do that. They had a plan.
Right.
So then I want to ask them, hey man, what are you studying this week? What's the word of the week? What's your season theme?
Yeah.
And they would look at me and be like, man, coach, I coach basketball. I got no time for, no. Let me help you. I want to help you. So Beyond the Game is something that, we did at First Baptist. I didn't call it Beyond the Game there. It was, more of just like themes and studies. But I would take a book, any book, even a secular book. We did a book by Urban Meyer called Above the Line, and it became our school-wide theme at First Baptist Academy. And what I would do is I would read the book. I'm trying to read coaching books and different leadership books. I would read a book, and then I would, if it was a secular book, I would pull out of it what I thought was great, and I would attach scripture to it. And then I would buy a book for my staff. And I'd say to the football staff, you got to read this. By the time we start camp, I want you to know what's going on. I would talk to them. I'm going to lead devotions. Kids will do some stuff. But the thing that I want to bring to heads of schools and to ADs and Beyond the Game is I could help. You're asking your athletic director, you're asking your basketball coach to be a great basketball coach, to be a good, godly man, to do things right, to deal with parents who are really hard sometimes to deal with in today's world with NIL and just every kid's going to be in a Division I college. And even if they're not very good, they think they're going to be great. You're dealing with all this. And then you're asking your coach to basically be a pastor. Like, it's a lot, Jerry. So when I go to an ACSI conference, I see all these teachers, they go into these breakout rooms and they all get schooled up on how to biblically integrate the Bible into their science class, into their English class, into their math class. Who's doing that for your basketball coach? That's me. That's what I want to do. I want to say, okay, take a book, read it, break it down, and create rhythms. So like for football, Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, those are devotion days. I didn't do devotion on a Wednesday. Kids had to go to church Wednesday night. The practice was short, got no time. I'm a football coach. 99% of practice was about tackling and blocking. Yeah. But I coached in a way that was intentional for the word of the week and for coaching with purpose. So then I would tie it to when I emailed the parents the practice plan. Jerry's kid plays for my team. And I would say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Nelson, da, 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 da. Oh, by the way, the word of the week this week is accountability. We're all over your kid about this, and this. The scripture is that. Now, it gave you a chance at the dinner table or on the way to school to say, hey, man, what's Sparacio talking about accountability? Does he even talk to you guys about that? And the kid will say, yeah, yesterday, I'm going to be honest. Yesterday, practice was bad. He was yelling at us, and he mentioned that we need to be more accountable and that we need to be accountable to each other. Now you got a dad talking to his kid about the same thing that I'm talking about. To me, that's a biblical worldview. You getting all the components. You got the kid, you got the family, you got the coach, you got the teacher, and the whole school takes on that theme. Now everybody's on the same page.
Right.
Now we're all speaking the same language. So it goes back to your other question. How does the sports program line up with the school? Share the same vision. What's your school-wide theme? If the football team has a different theme than the school, something's wrong. The football coach needs to get in line. The school theme is unity. Create unity. Unity is not being separate. Unity is being a part of the school. So anyway, beyond the game is my intentional coaching. So anyway, I get passionate and worked up about that, but that's where I'm at.
But it's quite obvious. God has just really called you to this season, and even from your story, you can see the spiritual formation directive through line through all of it. And Billy, I just want to say thank you. I'm great. I want to say thank you to our Lord for how He's just shaped you and just directed you and crafted you. And to our audience who's listening, for such a time as this, especially everything that's taken place in sports, man, it is refreshing to hear someone who understands what it means to be an authentic believer in Christ, but understands the area and the sphere of influence that God has called you into, that area of athletics. And I just want to also mention this as well. I see discipleship all over what you do, and I see it, number one, honoring that the commission that's been given to all of us, which is to make disciples of everyone that God has put in our sphere of influence until He takes us to our glory, and ultimately all for His glory. So, Billy, thank you so much for your time. And just, can you tell everyone how they can reach you, your website?
Yeah. I just, one more challenge that I would say, and I don't know, maybe some athletic directors and coaches would hear this. If you're a coach and you know who you are, you're a volleyball coach, you're a football coach, basketball, and you're one of the best teams in the school, as a coach, you need to understand the platform you have and get around and get with the kids who are not on your team. Like, get in the hallways and talk to kids who are not volleyball, football, basketball players, and invite them to a game, invite them to be a manager, invite them. The power, and I say that in a humble way, the influence, let's use that word. You could inspire people like no one else as a coach. And that is such a gift from God, but it's a responsibility. And I don't think we're using it to its ability. And that's what I want to, the easy thing for me to do would be to go get a job at a school and be an AD and a coach. I want to coach coaches. And that's why I started this business, why I'm doing this. My website is truevictoryconsulting.com. So, it's right there. I'm on LinkedIn. My cell phone is 239-272-2364. Call me. I'm just super passionate about trying to help people. And I don't care if you're at a school like First Baptist was 18 years ago, where they had no high school sports. You could become the next champion, and you could have both. And you can. Yes. I've seen it happen, not because of me, but because of what the Lord can do.
Amen. Amen. Pursuing righteousness for his glory, righteousness and excellence, all to bring glory to God. Billy, thank you so much, and may God continue to expand your territory.
I look forward to doing this again, hopefully soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you, man. Have a great day.
Grafted Together is a presentation of the Association of Christian Schools International. Learn more about biblical worldview and spiritual formation at acsi.org/graftedtogether.